Hi all, this is just a really quick video to give you an insight into what's growing where and what kind of needs doing on a regular basis to keep the grounds looking pretty. Okay, the main thing that needs doing sort of throughout the year is the pruning, and this is the entrance gate, and these brambles and bracken do get very overgrown. When the weather's wet, this whole area tends to flood. So for people who come in on foot, that sort of footpath needs to be kept clear enough that they can get in. And on this side particularly, we want to keep the overhanging shrubbery back, particularly by the gate, so that can get pushed back. There's a lot of brambles here, which I'm not super worried about unless they start encroaching on the path. And this is winter heliotrope, which is doing a good job of keeping this bed nice and tidy. I did try planting some interest on the top of this mound, but it is in the shadow of the trees. But there's some Gnifonia, red hot pokers there, and a buddleia. I think there might be some struggling stuff in there. Over on this side, this whole border along here is hard standing, so it's hard to get anything to grow. And I was at one point just mowing it for grass, but I also over the years have been going around strewing loads and loads of seeds, flower seeds, wildflower seeds, all kinds of stuff, to see what likes to go where. And it never comes where I want it to, but when it does pop up, I'm inclined to leave it. So if you see this here, this is a dame's violet. Beautifully scented flowers, and they're not always violet. Sometimes they're sort of pink, purple, white, but it's a really lovely plant, so please leave that. And here's another one here. You can see they're sort of clump forming, and they're perennials. They'll just keep coming back. I might at some point move them, but frankly it's been so hard to get anything to grow along here that I'm inclined to leave them. I've also noticed, I think, some cow parsley is starting to establish, which is one of the plants that I have also been sowing because I like cow parsley. I'll do a separate talk on what's edible and deadable around the farm, so you know the difference, but I'll do that separate from this one. It's a nice apple tree left over from when the farm was a farm. I have no idea what kind of apple it is. They tend not to get very big, but the birds and the other insects like them. So there's a few flowers along this border. Currant bush. Yeah. Oh, I say. Mock orange, the Philadelphus, is going to flower. This is a plant that I've tried to get to establish close to where we tend to sit, because the flowers smell absolutely gorgeous. But, well, it's happy here. When that comes out into flower, do come over and have a little sniff. One of the plants I have been spreading around the place is the vinca, the periwinkle, because it can be quite invasive if you have a small garden, but we've got loads of space here, and I think it's quite a nice plant, particularly this time of year, with its violet flowers. Now it is jumping the beds, and where it's coming out into the ground, into the road, I'll probably lift that, and if you lift it up, you can see how well rooted that is, and I'll transplant that somewhere else. And where I'll probably transplant it is somewhere along this border. You can see I've put a load into here, starting to establish finally, along with the honesty, the lunaria. In fact, look, there's a little gap. You can go in there. This side of the road I tend to think of as the semi-wild side, and this side is the sort of more gardeny side. However, again, it's a matter of what likes to grow where, and ages ago I transplanted a load of irises about the place, and look where they've decided they're happy, on the wild side. So this bit of hedgerow around here, this bit is mostly blackthorn. It looks like someone's had a prune of it. It does need kept cutting back so it doesn't scratch people's cars. And this side, as I said, I've tended to put in more sort of gardeny type flowers, and of course the fig. The forget-me-not I've been spreading around the farm. please forgive me, but I do really like it. I didn't really want it here. I wanted it more on this side. But when it's finished flowering, if anyone wants to just grab a load of those seeds and chuck them on the other side, eventually we'll get it established. And the other plant that's in this bed, which is finished now, so you've missed it, is the sweet violet, the Viola odorata. And there is literally tons of this stuff, absolutely gorgeous. Right, what's next? So this little area down here is the old Boxted Road, which got moved. And again, we like to try and keep this hedgery kind of slightly pruned back, because this is a useful parking space for open studios. And it's the same with this sort of shrubbery. It's mostly bramble, but there's some elder and some other things in there. Just keep that nice and tidy. That's fine. Hidden behind the lovely spruce trees, which are just coming into new leaf. More of that on the foraging video. Just behind there is a little pond that another tenant put in. I've been maintaining it as a wildlife pond, so please don't put any fish or food into it. It's getting a nice balance here. It's got some newts in it that I rescued from another pond, as well as some tadpoles, unless the newts have eaten them all. So you can feel free to come out here and have a little sit, but I'm sort of managing this pond, so don't mess with it too much. There's a small water garden here if you're interested in wildflowers. I put this in especially for the meadowsweet, because meadowsweet likes a damp root, and I like meadowsweet. This is the only wet spot on the site, by the way. So if anyone's worried about poisonous giant hogweed or anything like that, it won't grow here. It's too dry, and we won't get that wild garlic either, unfortunately. Now here amongst all the bluebells, and in case you're wondering, these are not native bluebells, and they're not really Spanish bluebells either. They're all kind of a mix now, and you can tell because the native bluebells bend and all the flowers are on one side of the stem, whereas with these hybrids they're much more upright and the flowers will pop out at all angles. They tend to be slightly more curvy as well. And there's something to do with the colour of the stamens, but I can't remember what it is. Anyway, unfortunately, one of the banes of my life on this site is this, which I refer to as bastard alkanet. But it is in fact green alkanet. And people tend to leave it because it's pretty, and because the bees do love it, the insects do love it. But honesty is so invasive. Look at this. It's just a sea of blue alkanet. And while I'm happy for it to be around the edges, the sort of wild borders, it's really problematic here. So if you see some of it popping up somewhere and you think, oh, that's pretty, think again. We are not short of this stuff. So this is the former allotment site, which I foolishly put in because somebody said they wanted an allotment on the site, and then nobody actually wanted to do anything with it. I did start making it into a physic garden, but again, it's hard to keep on top of. And another artist last year used it as an overflow allotment, which looked nice while the vegetables were in, but unfortunately she took out all the perennials. So at the moment, apart from the lovely forget-me-nots, which are also edible, by the way, there's not a lot in it. This was the scented bed, but now it's just bastard alkanet, arum, and these dranunculus, which I am very fond of. The dranunculus, the voodoo lily. So don't dig those out just yet. I am going to move them. However, if anyone wants to take on the allotment or do something with this, not even all of it, maybe just one of the beds, the only thing that's a sort of permanent feature is the rhubarb, the currants, and underneath this is a very nice red gooseberry bush, more of those currants, and a couple of apple trees. So yeah, they can stay, but this either needs something doing with or deconstructing. The lower beds aren't too bad. The higher beds, maybe it's best if we just take them down. I don't know. Let me know what you think. And over here, there is another sea of the green alkanet, which this will all need strimming down. And when the bluebells are finished, it wouldn't hurt to trim them too. But yeah, ideally I want to clear this before it sets seed. So it's flowering at the moment. And thank you to everyone, and particularly Dennis, who has already been keeping on top of the mowing and the strimming. Brilliant. These are the compost heaps. I do tend to dig these out in the spring to use the stuff as mulch and for other areas. So if you are cutting stuff back, do feel free to put it on the compost heap rather than just dump it in the hedgerow. However, do not put spiky things like brambles and rose bushes in the compost heap, because sometimes I dig them out with my bare hands and they are painful and spiky. So they can go along the back, and as you can see along here, there's a lot of twiggy stuff that's sort of building up a bit of a border around the edge of our site, and that is fine for the twiggy stuff and the spiky stuff to go. This is the gardening shed where the hand tools are and the hose. And in case you're wondering what tools you have available to use, this is the mower shed. There's a lot of sorting out tools that does need to be done, but we have a petrol mower, a petrol strimmer, a battery strimmer, come hedge cutter, brush cutter, and 2 or 3 electric mowers. All you'll need is an extension lead to use those, and there is an electric strimmer as well. If in doubt, ask me and I will help. The mound got completely out of my control. I was trying to keep on top of that. Under this pile of shrubbery is a mound, so maybe some clipping and stuff needs to be done. It's covered in comfrey, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That can go on the compost heap. The buddleia, all the buddleia needs cutting back. Not too hard, maybe 1/3 to 1/2. Now is the time of year to cut the buddleia back. Then it will flower on its new growth, which means it will be in full flower for open studios. And this is your classic sort of purple buddleia. There's another one round the corner, and I'll show you the other big buddleia in a minute. So this is the home of our on-site security guard, and again there's a lot of stuff that can just get trimmed back. All the hemlock and the nettles. These shrubs will need a nice little prune to keep on top of them, maybe not while it's flowering. It's the same with the shrubbery here. We've got another one of these that I've forgotten the name of, and a big snowberry, and it's a nice little cypress, I think, and a yew at the back of there. Bird cherry, lovely. Yeah, pruning and tidying. So just keeping things trimmed so they look nice. Not necessarily cut back to within an inch of their lives, but just nicely shaped, like someone has been doing with this berberis here. Very nice, thank you. And round this side, this whole edge up to the wall just needs trimming back. And I don't mind if we lose some of the forget-me-nots, as long as we get rid of that green alkanet and nettles. That can all just be trimmed back to the wall that's under there. And again, when this is finished flowering, that can be pruned and shaped. That's quite nice because it's evergreen, so we get like the foliage throughout the year. And you can see the brambles sort of coming through. They all need cutting back. Flowering currant has kind of finished flowering now, but that's not in a bad shape. And again, this bit, all this alkanet nettles can get cut, trimmed right down to the ground, and that can be trimmed all the way back into the hedgerow. And this area just gets mowed or trimmed. Now this bit, which is outside my studio, it's been a bit of a problem area. It's a boring lawn, it's full of moss. I tried making it into a meadow, that didn't work. I'm now making it into a formal physic garden, or parterre. So the There's not a lot going on at the moment, but yeah, just leave this bit because I'll be keeping on top of it and keeping an eye on it. And I've sowed some sort of wild herbs and things like calendula, evening primrose, wild carrot, things like that. So I'll keep on top of that, and I will sort out our little area outside the cottage here too. This is the other buddleia I mentioned. This is a buddleia globosa, I think. It's a globe buddleia, so rather than the purple racemes, you'll sort of get these little orange ping pong balls. Now this does need cutting back, but not too hard. It got cut back very hard in the past, and it hasn't really come back to its full glory since then. So again, I would say maybe a third to a half of the height and length of these stalks can come out. And then it'll come back and flower again for open studios. And just a few little things here and here, just prune them nicely into shape. Now against this wall, it's a bit of a problem area because we got given these sort of wooden planters, but there's a lot of very thuggish weeds around here. They're not all weeds, to be fair. If you look down here, we've got the other violet that we have on site, which is the dog violet. So it's not a scented violet, but like the sweet violet, you know, it's edible, and you can make syrup from the petals and that. What I have put in here is a lot of wild strawberries. So these have just been rampaging around, and they are spreading. And if they spread into the grass here, it might be an idea, to make it easier to mow, to take these out and put them in other places around the farm. So all the way along here there are the wild strawberries, but unfortunately there are also a lot of nettles and things, and a few plants in tubs that I put because I don't know what else to do here. Now this is another cutting from the big fig tree, and I might plant it actually in the ground and then train it across this wall. If you think that's an good idea, or if anyone wants to have a little go at that, feel free. There's a lot of jobs here that I'm happy for other people to just take responsibility for if they want to keep on top of these things. This is a rather thuggish wild rose. It's a native rose. Yeah, it's very spiky. This is the one that I don't want the branches of on the allotment heap. And it is quite nice, but I don't think this is the right place for it, so we might need to cut this back quite hard. On the other hand, it does look pretty in the winter when all the rose hips come up. And in here as well, there's a little, oh God, was it tiny pink flowers? It's a little jasmine. It's not a scented jasmine so much. So maybe it might be an idea, if we can, to remove the rose and just encourage the jasmine out a little bit more. So there's loads of things which do self-seed or get self-seeded by me, including the Trinthi major purpurescens. All the plants on this site are actually descendants of seeds that I picked up from my aunt's neighbour in Sark. They're Sarkese. I first saw it at Kew Gardens, and unfortunately that was the year that I got locked into one of the greenhouses, and by the time I got out the shop was closed. So I'm quite glad to have been able to get these, and they'll go to seed soon, and then we can just scatter those about, as with the I think they're Welsh poppies, very nice. See, that one's going to seed now. Once it goes brown, I tend to just pop these off and scatter them in other places. This is an acacia. I think it's not the same as the big acacia outside the White House, which is a false acacia, although the false acacia is a real acacia. But I grew this from a cutting, and it seems to be doing okay in that pot. It's looking a bit like a giant bonsai. That's nice. This is another one of the scented flowers which I mentioned earlier, and I've now forgotten the name of already, but it doesn't look like it's got buds on this year. It's got a nice shape, though. It tends to flower on the previous year's growth, so possibly it got pruned at the wrong time of year. But give that another year, and I reckon this will be covered in beautiful scented flowers which you can enjoy while we're sitting over there. This elder has always been a bit problematic because it's too close to the house, and although I do love an elder, This is another plant that does need to be kept on top of. So once it's finished flowering and fruiting, you might want to leave it to fruit if you want to use the fruit. Again, that needs cutting back. It's a massive old thing though. I kind of like it, but yeah, it does need to be kept under control. There's a little bed here which has some interesting plants in, because we got donated a load of seeds and bulbs and things, and they've gone into here, but it is literally just a little wooden planter. It doesn't have any access to soil, so this is something that it'll need weeding, and it will also need watering throughout the summer to keep it looking nice for studios, open studios and exhibitions and stuff. But as you can see, we've had some nice tulips out of it. There's a whole load of chives. These are all day lilies, also edible, which I'll talk about on my foraging bit. And some more dranunculus. That hawthorn seeded itself. Yeah, I do like hawthorn, beautiful native plant, but again, does need pruning. And I like the effort someone has gone into to keep it in a sort of ball prune. I think if we can keep that nicely pruned, take all the lower stuff off and keep the top bit sort of bald, same with the curry plant, that will look quite attractive, and it's particularly nice to have outside the gallery. And that, again, I've forgotten the name of it, what's wrong with me? This lovely hedge, it'll come to me in the middle of the night, won't it? This hedge is something that does need to be kept pruned regularly, pruned, clipped, shaped, because it can go a bit mad, but it's been kept on top of this year, which is quite nice. It's not a bad shape. When it's finished, oh, is it a Wigelia? I think that might be what it is. Yeah, so that just needs clipping to keep on top of it. So, and any little bits of grass which look like they need mowing or strimming, probably need mowing or strimming. This patch of nettles is the legacy from someone who did have oh, his compost bin is still there. There's a compost bin in there. We could dig that out. This just needs trimming back. It's not really performing any function, and we have plenty of sites elsewhere on the grounds where the nettles can flourish, do their thing, and provide homes and food for the insects. Thank you very much.